Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 2nd meeting of the Plympton Board of Selectmen. I think everyone in the room has pretty much heard the usual ground rules we do, so I'll skip those tonight. I don't think anyone needs to be introduced, so we might as well jump right in. Are there additional agenda items that anyone wanted considered for tonight's meeting beyond what's been published? Okay.
Actually, I have just a very minor thing. In the correspondence last week, there's something from MT Environmental, and John asked me to follow up on finding where the property was and that sort of thing, which I did.
Okay. Well, since we brought that up, do you want to start there?
It's behind the tractor supply store. I printed out the map. Here's Montello Street. So that's Tractor Supply. So it's, the plume was here, and this is where it enters into Plympton. The original also went to the Board of Health, so I assume that they would follow up on anything that we would follow up on.
Yeah, no, this is a...
And this was saying it was cleared.
Totally. So did it get into this cod pond?
I don't know, the highest concentration was down here. The packet had, online had 8 documents and, 72-page one and 5 3-page ones. And,
But they say it is clear now.
This is the release from the,
Okay.
so that's that.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn off the heat so that blower sound will go away.
I'm not sure it's clear.
So the way the agenda will go tonight, at 7 p.m. we're having a public safety buildings discussion, and the police chief, fire chief will be here, and potentially others. So we have an hour to get through the other stuff on the agenda. I guess maybe we should just go down the list in order. First item was the Silver Lake School budget meeting last week. All 3 of us were at the Silver Lake School Committee meeting. There was a so-called revenue subcommittee meeting before that. That was the first meeting of that committee. 3 members of, a member from each of the 3 towns, Mark Wittaboni was chairing it. We spent an hour together. Selectmen from each of the towns showed up. A fair part of the discussion was in what form the excess that couldn't be put in the E&D budget would be returned to the town, and there's an ongoing discussion on whether that would be in the form of a reduced assessment, whether that would be distributed. So that was one issue still not resolved. The second issue that came up was exploring whether there was some way that the school committee and school administration, could create a capital budget that could be funded potentially through the special town meetings already scheduled this spring, so that they'd be able to do that stuff in fiscal year 16 rather than waiting to fiscal year 17. That wasn't completely resolved either, but something that was going to continue to be explored. The rest of the meeting dealt mainly with a go-around with Board of Selectmen from each town, FinCom representatives from each town, describing how they felt about this situation and what they hoped to see. And I think if there was a theme that came out of that, it was the towns wanting a long-range capital plan with dates and priorities to be able to plan from year to year, and to be able to better understand if there is some reimbursement that comes back from the settlement on how to hold on to that and budget it to fulfill the needs along the way. I think the other thing that came up is pretty much everyone was was an agreement, if towns were getting money back, a not good thing to do would be to use that in yearly operating expenses. So those were the issues that felt like they came up as I heard them. The next meeting of this group is March 12th at 5 p.m. I didn't feel like there was any conclusions made, but those are the ongoing issues that people are thinking about.
I would like to just add that the vote that the school committee took on January 8th was rescinded on the advice of Silver Lakes Council. Even though it was a moot point because Halifax and Plympton had already voted the use of funds down, the attorney still felt that the open meeting law was violated and that vote had to be rescinded, and so they did so.
I think the only other thing I might comment on, both in this revenue subcommittee meeting and in the school committee meeting where there was selectmen and FinCom from all three towns, repeatedly the theme there was we want to do what we can, but we have to do it within financial limitations. And everyone respects what the school does and the importance of what it does, and that there are financial limitations. And we are in the midst of the budget process.
It did sound like most of them heard that. Maybe one or two of them were still wanting to spend too much, but it sounded like most of them understood that the towns have other groups that have their call on their money, and this was just the first go-around with the budget.
Okay. So actually, the next item is annual town meeting preparations, but let's drop that down on the list here and deal with some of this other stuff. So the next item is PEG access preparations, and I guess that was, as a reminder to me, I did write to Alana, Town Council, again last week. I CC'd you guys on that, asking for some clarification on one or more town meeting warrant articles that we'll need for at least one path that we could take, which would be Comcast contract renewal and joining the Tri-Town cable. So we're waiting to hear from Alana on that. I would just say as an aside, there was a meeting of the board of the Halifax Carver cable group, and it was held in their new studio, which is actually quite beautiful. A bunch of nice ideas on how to use the studio, how to make that a real community asset along the way. So that's my little pitch on that. We'll have more of that along the way. Anything anyone wants to say about that? So next is town government vacancies, and it's a little bit of a reminder to me to mention that we do have present vacancies on the Finance Committee, on the Open Space Committee, and to remind people that the calendar for annual town meeting articles, for taking out papers for elected office is posted on the town website. The last day that nomination papers can be submitted is March 30th. There are all kinds of open positions. That's also on the town website. A great time for people to get involved. It's one thing to talk and complain, another to get involved and see what can be done. My usual pitch is that we are a tiny little town and cannot hire all the staff we might like, and we need help in terms of volunteers, and albeit being involved in town government certainly has its challenges and is sometimes merely grist for one's equanimity practice. It's also a really rewarding way to feel purposeful and make a difference. So anyone that has any inkling whatsoever of being involved in town government, now is a great time to consider letting us know about interest in any openings, or certainly running for any of these elected offices. Mr. Henry last week had a great suggestion for people that think they might be interested to attend meetings of any of these boards or committees and see what it's like and see what you could contribute. That's my pitch. Okay. All right. The next item was something that was brought up last week. We received a letter last week from the South Shore Community Action Council asking if maybe a representative could come and meet with us. I checked with them to get a better sense of what they were after. In truth, I knew nothing about the South Shore Community Action Council until I made that call last week. As I understand it, they are a private not-for-profit. They're funded by federal, state, local sources and by private foundational sources. They provide a lot of services for low-income people, including fuel assistance, transportation help, a food warehouse, and a bunch of other things. They wanted to come in. I think they're interested in talking to selectmen in the various towns they serve on the possibility of the towns being able to help fund them. I forewarned the representative that I spoke to that our budgets are pretty tight. I bring this all up for two reasons. One, to check with my colleagues on whether they'd like a representative to come in and at least talk to us. And then the second reason I bring it up is having checked out their website, I'm actually pretty excited about what they do, and for people that make yearly contributions to various nonprofit organizations that can be helpful, I would bring their attention to this one.
I think it would be fine for them to come in. If nothing else, it puts them before a greater audience, and if there are people in town that need their services, or if there are people in town that can contribute, then they have a contact.
Okay, I'll set that up. I'll set it up for maybe in early April when you're back, John. Okay, so that's that one. So townhouse weather and emergency closure policy, we talked about that last week. The last we approved the draft policy. The last piece that was involved with that is sorting out that if we closed townhouse, if the emergency management team decided to close townhouse for an emergency or for a weather problem, how we would notify people, and checking with Tara, the town clerk, it seemed like the best way to do that would be two ways. One, the town website to put up notification that townhouse would be closed, and then two, use a group text to notify department heads. And so I've written to the emergency management team, which is the fire chief, the police chief, and the highway surveyor, and we'll set that up. Some department heads have asked for as early notification as possible for people that come to work early in the morning, and of course we'll do the best we can on that. Sometimes you're not sure whether it's going to be a rainstorm or a snowstorm, but I think we have this now, a system in place. I think the general tendency was that our present policy of being open the vast majority of the time unless the weather was extremely severe, and then leaving it up to individual employees and staff members to make the decision, will continue to be the tenure of this. But at least we now have in place a process if we feel like we do need to close townhouse. All right. Next, again, this one I put on just so it wouldn't get lost in the shuffle. We met with the Recreation Commission last year. They had concerns about the Dennett Field sprinklers, the maintenance of them, both in terms of the funding and the work to be done. I haven't come up with any good solution yet. I'm hoping you guys have.
I think, didn't Art volunteer to run those sprinklers?
It was a little short of that, but it was almost there. Oh, there it is!
It was a timely entrance.
We had a little pitch about volunteerism just now. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
I told you, I'd go over and turn them on and turn them off.
okay.
And I meant it.
But they still would have to hire somebody to blow it out in the fall.
Yeah, with the compressed air in the fall, that's basically the only thing. And then when you turn it on in the spring, you run all the zones and make sure that all the heads are working. And
Replace what are broken, which is no biggie.
no, I've got commercial heads and mine are about $22 or $23 a piece just for the head. And putting them in is no big deal.
So if you're willing to do that, should you go to the next rec meeting and talk with them about this?
Well, I told John Williamson that, I was serious, I'd volunteer to do it, the rec commission was right here, so I mean, all they have to do is say, we'd like your help.
All right. So that's one piece of it. I mean, the other piece of it is I think I heard that they would like to get out from under whatever costs were involved coming out of their budget. Seems to me that would just have to go to someone else's budget, and this may not be the time to be adding much of anything new.
So this is going to cut it in half.
Yeah, that would reduce it, right?
Okay.
No, I don't want to add that cost to the Board of Health's budget. Just be on record for that.
Okay. All right, well, I'll pass on. At least it's a partial solution that we do have volunteer help, and actually, in seriousness, thank you for the offer of help. I have a feeling that this year may be the year that we need a lot of volunteer help in that regard. So I'll write a note to the Rec Commission Chair, and you guys can take it from there.
Okay.
Very good. Okay. So that's, all right. Solar ongoing projects, I suspect there's nothing new on the projects. Anything to report from the Bylaws Revision Committee?
Yes, planning board met again. Well, they met on Saturday and they met on Wednesday and had too much discussion to reach a vote. Met again on Saturday and did vote to accept the bylaw revision. I will contact them to see where we need to go. Basically, as far as I know, it's in their court, but I will offer solar bylaw revisions help to move things
Well,
along.
we're going to set up a hearing, and
Okay,
and I'll forward the bylaw as it is to town council for review, explaining that it was just a modification of last year's bylaw. I'll probably forward both copies just so they can see the difference between the two. And unless there's any changes made at the public hearing, it will go on the warrant as it's written.
So that's the order, to town council first, then public hearing?
Yeah, well, so they can be simultaneous, but I mean, generally, public hearings they don't change a whole lot of things. There's not a lot of contention, I think, there, so it'll probably go through as it's written. And town council will review it. They reviewed the last one. This one is not too much different. It just has a lot more definition than the old one, so, which is actually better. It's an improvement, I think, but
We actually, Dale and I met with her today,
Oh, okay.
so that they picked the right dates, or it's going away, I think, for a while, so we worked around that.
yeah.
public hearing.
Or Butler's going to be on vacation for a little bit, but we can schedule it any time around then. He just asked that it be scheduled on a Monday night when that's their normal meeting night, so it'll probably be the end of this month, third or fourth week.
So you're on top of,
Yeah, we'll take care of the
regardless of
hearing.
whoever else is on it, you're on top of.
We'll take care of the hearing and take care of and send it to council.
Great.
And keep Tara in the loop.
Yes. Or she will keep me in the loop. one way or the other.
Exactly.
Okay. And I think this got mentioned last week, but just in case it didn't, the Solar Bylaw Committee, I think, did a great job on taking a really complex issue and having a kind of diverse committee and getting work done in a timely fashion. We are very
They were a really
appreciative.
good group, really worked hard, went to other towns, actually physically went to other towns and got their documents and went through them and did a good job.
And Colleen held the whole thing together, and we are appreciative.
There was a glitch or something, that's something to do with the way we set the committee up. I still think we tried to, give people the opportunity to get on it and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
we just got to, the key, I think, is that when we're setting up a committee that's looking at something that another board or committee is responsible for, we're going to make sure they're in the loop, even if a member is on this committee. But
Yes, which I guess I thought that was, we announced here several times that we were looking for volunteers, and we had a member of planning board on the committee, but apparently that some people thought that there should be somebody from the previous bylaw committee on there. I actually never thought of that. We will think about that in the future.
And I never thought of it, and I am willing to take some of the blame for that, or I think it's a lesson well learned. I mean, I thought we did everything right, but obviously communication ahead of time just saves so much hassle and trouble, and so a good lesson learned there. Okay. Geez. Future meeting, Board of Selectmen meeting schedule, I think is pretty well set. We are set for this, this is wrong on this. This Thursday at 10 a.m., the Public Safety Buildings Working Group is meeting. And we did add what I expect will be a brief executive session to that meeting. I think you guys got the agenda to deal with an ongoing litigation matter that needs some more attention as
So
well.
it's still at 10 or 15 minutes earlier?
I think I have a meeting at 9, so maybe if we can keep it at 10, we'll fit the executive session in at the end.
probably 10 a.m., right?
Yes, did that get on?
So it says-
Oh, that one got totally fouled up. Oof. All right, so yeah, that does have a notice of meeting and the agenda published, and I think we got the right date and the right time on that. Sorry. All right, and then otherwise, we are not meeting next week, we, the Board of Selectmen, we will be meeting March 16th, 23rd, and 30th. We expect at the moment it'll all be at 6 p.m.
And did you hear from the FinCom that the Tuesday morning meeting was changed?
Nope.
Okay, for Monday, March 16th, changed to 5:30.
5:30 at night?
Yes.
Okay, all right. No, I hadn't heard.
And actually, so they go over the Board of Selectmen budget at 5:30, and then we meet with the FinCom at 6 to kind of...
In our regular meeting.
In our regular meeting to
Yes.
get an update on how things are going. Okay. So then, next agenda item is annual town meeting preparation, including preparing warrant articles. Do you have anything on that, Dale?
We put out a request for any warrant articles, and so far, none. I hear one, tonight I heard that there's one coming in. I've gotten,
We got assessors, didn't we?
pardon me?
We got something from assessors, didn't we?
Yeah, I've got, they're pretty much their standard articles that they put in every year for the appraisals and so on. Nothing unusual. I did get one from the fire department for their new command vehicle. And I got two from the police department, which are their standard lease, vehicle lease warrant articles. And outside of that, I haven't, there doesn't seem to be a lot of activity out there. Normally there is, but
The rescinding vote on, Alana probably hasn't responded to you.
No, no, but I will definitely, that's on my thing to do. I will get to her on that. And-
Have we heard any more from the other two towns about considering it? Just so we're not going in opposite directions.
I think they're both going to put it on there as a courtesy, but I think none of them want it. Now, Halifax, I think, has voted it down twice, so why they continue to put it on, I don't know, but...
I would hope we don't get into a situation we rescind and they institute. That would-
No, none of them want that until we get through all of this other stuff.
Okay. So what would happen if all three towns did it? Would that become another cubbyhole for some of the settlement money?
Well, they're pushing it, and so I wonder if that's not an attempt to say, well, let's do this. Because the only control the towns have on it is when it's funded. There is no further control on how it's spent, so.
Okay. Hmm. So I guess we're up to town coordinator report.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing double duty this week. Actually, last week, but it looks like a little bit of this week as well. Just picking up the mail. The only thing that's really pressing is I think we're going to have to put a call into our insurance company again for the leaks that we have due to the ice dams and so on and so forth. It's because it was leaking again today in the middle of the roof, which doesn't make sense. At least get them to evaluate it and see where it stands. We did sustain some damage with the first ice dam. I mean, then we'd have to have a long-range problem to solve the ice dam problem, because we did get them last year, and this year was terrible. But I'm thinking that on those two stretches, those two runs of the building to remove the gutters and then put in sort of a pea stone area for a drip along the outside, that should help somewhat. I mean, the only other alternative is to run at 5 cents a watt, or at 5 watts per foot, heat tape. Even if you run it on and off, it's still a considerable increase in electric usage. And have to be all through the gutters, the downspouts, and the roof. And it just seems to be easier to just eliminate the gutters entirely. There's no water.
On the latest, the leak there, it's moved over and it's coming out of the light and stuff, I guess. Should you give Roger a call again?
Yeah, I mean, I will definitely give him a call again. I mean, he's been obviously pretty haggard the last month because everybody's between snow removal and ice damage and so on and so forth. But I'll give him another call again tomorrow and have him, because you're right, it did, and it's moved in a spot, and I can't for the life of me figure out, it may be where the roofs are joining together, I don't know. But that problem should have been solved, so.
That's not, that doesn't appear to be the ice dam issue. It appears to be something different.
Right. And I'm not sure where that could be coming from, unless there was some damage done when they were up there or whatever, I don't know. But I should have him I will call him and have him look at that.
So you're going to check with the roofer, and you're going to check with the insurance company in terms of whether we have any coverage, is that?
Well, we would be covered, I mean, but where we had claim last year for the same thing, but we did everything that we were supposed to do. I mean, we repaired the roof and put up new gutters and so on and so forth. Quite honestly, it didn't seem to help, so I don't know what their recommendation would be, but at least it's good for them to take a
But you
look
will
at it.
pursue
It
that?
is. Because we did have a leak on the other side too this year. That was on my side, in my office.
So you will pursue that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And beyond that, it's been the time has been taken up with the researching the public safety building. We've done a lot of that. There were 4 of us who went to Dartmouth on Thursday to look at their police station that they just did, and that'll come out in the hearing part of it. But it was a pretty impressive trip. And we get, just basically at this point gathering some information. It'll come out. I've got, I don't have rough numbers for what it's going to cost, but I have rough numbers for what it's going to cost us in terms of insurance. I mean, in terms of bonding fees and so on and so forth, if we were to go with it, and what the amount would be that we'd have to kick in every year. And again, we'll do that in the regular session. And beyond that, I don't know, open a lot of mail now.
And we think, as I understand it, Kristen will be back Wednesday.
Yeah, she's supposed to fly in tomorrow. They got a schedule to fly in tomorrow. The weather looks good, so I'm sure they'll make it, and she'll be back in on Wednesday. If you got to get stranded someplace, Orlando's really not a bad place to get stranded at this time of year.
Okay. That it for you?
That's it.
Thank you, sir. Where's your correspondence folder?
It's empty.
Wow. Okay.
Now, wait a minute now. Dale spends the day opening mail, and you're...
I think they're in cahoots. I think they throw
What,
it away.
are we talking about correspondence? I'm much, you can call me correspondence light if you want. I mean, I think a lot of stuff gets passed on to correspondence that is more or less ends up in the circular file somewhere, or it would, or it should, but I don't. There are a few things that came in that I did not put in your correspondence, and again, it's mostly Old Colony Planning Council, their agendas and their minutes, and a couple of things. There was nothing of any import, or I would have gotten it to you.
All right, so minutes for February 23rd, I think that was yours. I don't think we have those.
And I don't have them done,
Okay,
and I
so
don't have them transcribed.
maybe we'll have them for Thursday?
Hopefully I'll have those for Thursday.
Okay.
Maybe if I'm lucky, I'll have tonight's as well.
Okay, great. So that's everything on the agenda. We can take a recess until the 7 o'clock thing, unless there's anything else that would be appropriate to talk about now. Silence is not.
Nothing.
Okay, so we'll take a 25-minute recess, and we'll be back at 7 to talk about public safety building. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We've had an executive session, we've had our open meeting discussion and actions, and so now we took a brief recess, and here we are at 7 o'clock for public safety buildings discussion. Because I am in a butter of some land that is still under consideration as a site for the public safety buildings, I'm going to go sit in the audience. If I make any comments, I would do so as a private citizen rather than Board of Selectmen member or a Community Preservation Committee member. As I understand it, we're going to start with a introductory remarks from Dale, and then we'll have an open discussion from there.
Okay. Basically, we've had 2 or 3 meetings now with the board and the 2 chiefs. And we looked at the original study that was done, the town complex building study that was done. Very good, very, very comprehensive. And the conclusion was that we really couldn't afford to do what they had, had in there at this particular point in time. It was just going to be too expensive. So we looked at a few other options. And what a lot of communities are doing is they're going to modular construction. And the reason being that in modular construction, you buy the entire package and you have it set on your property, and you don't have to pay prevailing wage. prevailing wage law in Massachusetts means that there's a union scale that has to be paid for every job. And it drives the cost of public buildings up by about 40%. So when we started looking into that, actually some interesting things popped out, and it was fairly interesting to fund it. I think the first place to go is that everybody thinks that modular, they get this, this 1960s idea of what a modular building looks like, and it's not really true anymore. The company that's given us a lot of information, there are more than one, there's a lot of them actually, but the company that's given us the most information, mainly because they're right in Lakeville and they just finished a police station for the town of Dartmouth, also did a school, a high school in Bridgewater, or a wing of a high school in Bridgewater, and they did a cell block, a building at the prison in Bridgewater also, among other things. So they have the capabilities to do a lot of stuff. If you go on and just look at municipal buildings, modular municipal buildings on the internet, there's a ton of stuff out there, a ton of stuff. But to give you an idea, and we downsized some of the recommendations that they had in here too, as well. And I mean, they had situations where the cost of a police station was about $3.7 million with everything that was involved. And I'm sorry, the $2.7 million actually, and when you add in all of the rest of the factors, their number came into $3,107,000, and the fire station came in at $3,700,000. And if you add those together or even do a combined building, the number's too big. That would require an override vote, it would require a debt exclusion and an override vote, and it would raise taxes. And when we started this and started looking at it, met with the board, and the board said, we'll look at anything, but under no circumstances will we support anything that is going to raise the tax rate, which is fair enough. Taxes are already high enough, I guess. But with the money that's going into the capital stabilization account that we created 2 years ago, and the interest rates that are currently available, which are very low, we can afford it, and it can be paid out of that account, and it doesn't require raising taxes if the number stays under ballpark 5 million. I've checked into the bonding. Plympton has an excellent bond rating, and the last time that was done was when Dennett was revamped and built in the early 2000s. Our bond rating is probably actually better now because we have more money in stabilization and more money in capital stabilization, which didn't exist at the time. So we may be a AAA plus. At this point, we're a AA plus. And communities and interest rates, the other factor to consider in doing this now rather than later is interest rates are on their way up. Current interest rates for towns with our credit rating probably are about 2.7. They're under 3. I did my calculations to figure it at 3%, figuring by the time that we got there it would probably be 3%. But in any event, that's neither here nor there. The first thing to address here is the whole modular thing, and we've looked at a couple of different locations for all of this. I mean, there was a joint facility that was put together originally, and it was here on this campus was one of the locations for it. I've sort of shied away from that a little bit and building 2 separate buildings because it's fairly inexpensive. You don't really save an awful lot of money if you build the 2 buildings together for a lot of reasons. Fire stations and police stations are very different buildings. And the locations that we've come up with at this point are here, but right there for the police station, between here and the highway barn. And the town-owned property on Center Street. Center Street hasn't been fully evaluated yet. This has been pretty much all evaluated. There's some advantages Well, the first advantage to putting the fire station on Center Street is it's centrally located in the town, so their response time for ambulances would be the most optimum for any point in the town. The reason for using this campus, we have the land here, and the septic system that provides septic for this entire campus is woefully underutilized. So we'll have a certification when we can tie into that septic system. We won't have to build a septic system. And there are a couple of provisions to actually bring gas to fire that building and the town hall and the highway barn at the same time. The highway barn's an expensive building to heat because it uses propane. If it had natural gas, the price would go way down. They spend a lot of money over there just because they got doors open all the time, and when the building is being utilized for snow removal in the winter. The same thing would be the Center Street property. We would run gas from Main Street to the site on Center Street. And we're getting some numbers from Jim Mulcahy on that now. First of all, well, let me show you this. This is, I think this is a good one. Yeah, this is the first one. This is a building that was proposed for us, and it's actually being built, virtually the same building is being built in Hamden, Massachusetts right now. It's about 5,800 square feet of space, and another almost 2,000 in sally ports and so on and so forth. It's probably a little bit bigger than we may need, not a lot, because you have to. Fire stations, police stations, they have to serve certain basic functions, and I like to refer to it as the Plympton paradox, because it's, we're a small town, but to operate the minimum for a police department, to have your people on the road and to patrol, you need a certain number of officers, and you can use that same number of officers in the town of Halifax, which is 2.5 times the size of Plympton population-wise. It's like the dispatch, which we don't do in this town. Costs the same amount of money to dispatch Plympton if we were to have our own dispatch center, as it costs to a town like Halifax, which has got many more taxpayers paying for it. So this was their first run by when I asked them to come up with some stuff. And I said, well, put it together. There's a floor plan. This covers all of the bills. This building would take care of Plympton's needs for 30 years, probably. It wouldn't have to be any bigger. It would be maintenance-free, and it can look basically any way you want it to look. The siding can be any kind of siding you want to put on it. I mean, they do, in some of these buildings, they do a very thin brick veneer as a siding. And first of all, it's fairly maintenance-free, and that's part of it. Or traditional clapboard, or vinyl, or anything else we wanted to put on. That would be aesthetics, and that's basically why some people got invited, so that we could hear about the aesthetic part of it. Because it won't be in the historical district, but it would be a neighbor to this building right over there, the police station. Let me see if I've got anything else that... This is the floor plan. Now, unfortunately, that really doesn't show you too much, but we'll blow it up and then just kind of look at it in different pieces. Oh, that's too much blown up. But this is the layout of a. And it's a pretty standard layout at the top of the building. And here, this is a sally port, which is standard for law enforcement. It's a building that you can drive into, close the doors if you have a prisoner, take them out, and you're in a secure area. It's not like you have to walk them outside in any way, shape, or form. And adjacent to that is your cell block holding areas, booking, evidence, and all of the stuff. And then you proceed through the building a little bit farther. And you've got male, female locker rooms and dressing areas, different storage. This building was built on a slab, so all of the utilities are actually in the building, on this floor plan. And in this particular area, they use this entire building, this entire area here is a dispatch area. Dispatch is a very expensive part of a police station because it has to be secure, which means it has to have its own concrete wall around it, and bulletproof glass. It has to have its own separate HVAC system, heat and air conditioning, and its own separate laboratory facilities and so on and so forth. And again, so it becomes very expensive, not to mention the communications, the electronic communications part of it. We're not going to have to do that. That would, under normal circumstances of prevailing wage, that's going to save about $1 million, $750,000 on the cost of the building. And again, like I said, this building, this is just a preliminary layout that I asked them to put up, and they were really nice enough to put this stuff up. They just finished a 7,000 square foot police station in Dartmouth, and we took a visit to it and visited it on last Thursday, and it was pretty impressive. I was pretty impressed when I went inside it. And they delivered all the panels on site. Now that was a quick police station because they had a sick building. The building the police were in got Legionnaire's disease, and they actually had an officer get really sick from Legionnaire's disease. So they had to move very quickly to get out of that building, and that was their solution. So it has the kind of trailer look to it, and it's a flat roof. I mean, in our case, we would be putting on a peak roof. It would fit. It would look nice, colonial, and again, it can be any kind of finish we want. I asked them to do a quick layout for a fire station based on some of the information that I had given them, and this was what they came up with. Again, it's less sensitive as to what this type of building looks like, but it would still look good. This has four 60-foot bays. I know I've talked to the chief. None of this is etched in stone yet. And they laid out like 5 bunk rooms in this, and I think that's probably way more than we need. But it would tend to be laid out a little different. Male, female locker areas. You've got to have all of that. Yeah, I mean, by code and law, you have to have all of that sort of stuff. So that is where we're at on that. The other thing is, there's a lot of time saved in this. You can, once from the time you sign the paper, you can have these buildings ready to go in 5 or 6 months, as opposed to a year and a half with a stick-built building. And beyond that, we're at that stage. There are several others that are out there. It's an expandable firehouse. That's just from another company. It's a schematic. That's a modular, expandable firehouse. You can add pieces to it, subtract stuff out of it. This is a fairly smaller one that they would be using. It really doesn't have, although it does have overnight facilities in it. And then, just to give you an idea, and again, it has a fairly modern look with clear story construction. It's not something we would necessarily do, but again, that's a modular building. It's delivered in pieces and put together. The other thing is they use all of them. They all build to the green community standard, all build to the energy stretch code that we're bound to do now because we're a green community. But most of them have done that before there was, before it was ever the need. I mean, 2x6 exterior construction, R19 insulation in the walls, and R30s in the ceilings and the floors. They do all of that as a matter of course. They come through. As a matter of fact, the trailer that we bought to temporarily house the fire department is built to that same standard. It's basically a wood frame building on a steel trailer, and it seems to be holding up pretty well, even in the wind.
Yes, and the snow load. Yeah.
And snow load, yeah. It's anchored pretty well, but and this is Anyway, that was the projection that they gave us, because we saw that building and said, yeah, that looks good, that kind of has the right size to it, and, you know, and it's got the right layout, and they, like I said, they could deliver that. I don't know what the Hamden building cost Hamden at this point, because the bids are not, it's not public yet. But I do know that Hamden took out $3 million, and a lot of that $3 million was other stuff that they had thrown into the wish list along the way for the bonding. They considered their site work at $300,000. They have to build septic and drill wells and so on and so forth. So, in any event, I mean, I'll just throw it out there. Anybody got any questions? Any, you know?
Well, Darren's number.
Oh, the cost? Yeah, and it would be more than that for us, but, well, I don't know how much more. But anyway, Dartmouth built 7,000 square feet, and that's 7,000 square feet inside. That's not the sally ports or garages or anything like that. They built a 7,000 square foot complete for $730,000. Now, granted, that's got the trailer look to it. It's the trailer units. They all come through with, they're all electrically driven for heating and air conditioning, so they're fairly expensive to operate. We would be doing it differently. But it was $730,000 was the cost of the building, flat roof. I mean, so it would, I mean, again, it would be more than that. It was a smaller building, though. We wouldn't need that kind of space.
If I could add to that, Dartmouth's police building is, it's expected to be temporary, he said 4 to 5 years, until they can figure out what to do with the current police facility.
Yeah, they're-
And then they'll repurpose that building within the town, so they can, that's why they kept it on pilot, so that they can move it in the future.
Yeah, because they're not sure what they're going to do, and they needed to do something quickly. And that's what they did. It's a nice building. I mean, inside it's very efficient inside. It's laid out well. It's a very tight building. I was amazed when I went in there. It was really tight. You could feel that. I mean, because it was one of our normal crappy days that we've been having now, and it was pretty good. I mean, the question as to whether to build this on a slab or put a full foundation underneath it and utilize some different space that way, those are all up in the air at this particular point in time. It was just to see if it was doable, and it would be doable. Just to give you the numbers right now, if we were to, let's just say we were to, currently we're depositing about $500,000 a year into that capital account. We're also currently fairly up to date with big capital items such as vehicles and fire trucks and all of that kind of stuff, and highway trucks. So we're not going to really be spending anything for that. And if we were, and this would be a bond issue, the vote at the town meeting would be to float a bond from the town for 20 years to build and originally equip a fire and police station. If we were to borrow $5 million to do that, the payback annually would be $332,000. So that would still leave almost $170,000 a year at today's rates freed up in that capital account for other capital things. If we were to go at $4 million, it would only be $266,000. And I did this at 3%, not at the 2.7%. So again, it appears to be doable. I mean, as we flesh it out more, we may find the numbers closer to the $5 million number or closer to the $4 million number, but I don't know where that'll be. But it appears to be doable. And in terms of infrastructure in town, these are basically almost the last two pieces of the puzzle, which if we build them, we're done. You know, we're not going to be building anything for 30 years as far as those go.
Except maybe some roads.
Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and again, I mean, you know, if we were to, if there's still money available, I know that there's talk about some infrastructure money for streets and for, you know, that stuff to sort of jump ahead of the Chapter 90 stuff. I know I talked to Jimmy about that. And again, all of that is pretty doable going forward. I mean, you know, as the amount going into the capital account, if all things remain the same, will diminish over time. because of the way it's valued, the way that all that property is valued. But, I mean, there could be other companies that move in there could be additional upgrades or additions to the companies that are in the industrial zone that provide the tax base, but there certainly should be enough money to get this project to the end. And I haven't looked into financing it for 25 years, although you could do that. These buildings would have a useful life of at least 20 years, probably more. This building, we're using this building, the fire station, how old is it?
40 years old this year.
5 years, yeah, it's 74. That's right.
No, it's older than that.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
It was here before I came. They built it 2 years before I got here. We've been,
Well, then it was built in 74, and that's when this building got taken over as a townhouse. So this building's been here since 54.
Right.
Now, granted, it's a little,
38.
well, the front part has been here since 38.
That police building, yeah, it's like 77 years old.
Yeah.
Police building, that doesn't have any Legion Hair's disease, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
But it does have the Revolutionary Soldiers disease.
Where is she? Right there.
The other thing of doing this and not sacrificing the existing police station solves a couple of other problems down the road. First of all, it gives us all 3 bays in the fire station for storage. The fire chief and the highway surveyor both have seasonal equipment they swap out all the time. You know, you're not using a brush truck when there's 3 feet of snow on the ground or whatever, and you know, you've got plows that you use all winter and then you don't touch them in the summer. All that stuff would be nicely if it was in dry storage. That building could be used for that. There's more than enough space to use that building as a storage. And then the smaller side of it, that's basically where the offices are and everything else, that could be repurposed. I mean, the first thing that sort of comes to mind is a meeting area, council on aging, let's say, or something like that. Because most towns have their own building, they build council on aging buildings, which is another expense. We have one standing there with very little refit, could probably be repurposed to that end. Anyway, that's where we're at. There are, like I said, there are several companies that come in. Jack?
First question out of my mind is, why are you even thinking about Center Street?
It's the best location that we
It
have.
might be the best location, but it's never gonna work.
Why is it never going to work?
Because of the land, the amount of land you have, the perking and the septic system.
I'm not
You
sure.
have to set the septic system up as opposed to your buildings. We went through all this before,
That wasn't ever perked.
and we rolled it out completely.
Well, did anybody ever do a perk test? Because that's what we're going to do as soon as we can find it. We're going to do a perk test on it this year. It was part of the evaluation that was agreed to at a meeting at last town meeting. They put money in to evaluate certain parcels, this one, Maple Street, that one.
And even at the town meeting, we said that it wouldn't be necessary to perk Center Street. Am I wrong there, John?
I think we were talking a combined building at that time.
No, never.
We never tried to comply on that site.
But they did put the fire, one of their scenarios calls for the fire station on that piece of property.
That's
It
a
wasn't
possible
recommended.
one, because that didn't need the well. But my other question, at least about what Jack brought up with that site, was at the time, and you've been working with the chiefs, and maybe he's changed his view on it, but at that time, he didn't like that site because the road was small. Here, he's right on 58, for Palmer Street, he's right on 58, which gives him quicker access out of the station instead of that small Center Street. And I don't know if that is no longer an issue.
I believe the site that I felt was not favorable was the Maple Palmer Road site, because it was the corner of the road, and I was concerned with running apparatus on Maple Street because of the way it's built at the end. The big consideration we have here is we need to get this building near the gas line. And having the gas line out of Main Street to bring it 4/10 of a mile, the cost is around $80,000?
The estimate was between 78 and
Depends on the rate of
90,000,
return.
wasn't figuring any rate of return.
And in some of the other locations we've looked at, which we don't own and some we do own, that was always a big consideration, that we somehow have to get that gas line there. We can't be pumping oil into that thing for the next 40 or 50 years. So that became more favorable and centrally located certainly, and could work, and it's town owned.
So my other comment, not from working on the committee, but just as a resident, partially worked on the committee. I'd want both chiefs to be I'd want to know as a resident that both chiefs are really good with this idea, because we have a tendency in this town, since before I came, to always take the shortcut, because we don't want to take a hit today out of our pocketbooks and do something expedient. And here's an opportunity to do it all right from the beginning. And I understand taxes going up. I will be on a fixed income myself in the not too far future, so I'm concerned about that. But I sure as heck would rather have it done right to begin with than to try to do two partial things, modular, where I don't know how much design you guys are going to have, how much say you're going to have in that design. Are you going to be given a box and say, go fit it out, or as opposed to something that's designed for your needs, which is what we looked at for those 2
So
years?
far, Barry, the Board of Selectmen have been great. We've been meeting on a regular basis for probably the past 6 weeks, all through the winter. Work with Gail on a daily basis. I came up with this idea because we knew that the fire department had the trailer built by a modular company, and once we realized it's not your father's modular building or your grandfather's modular building, you see this, you can pretty much get the same thing without paying the prevailing wages, so you can almost knock a third off. I want a substandard structure. I'm sure when it comes down to it, is designing the interior, I would expect to have as much say as anyone else in the
Good. So that's one other thing I wanted to make before I left was, you mentioned at the beginning, Dale, that the committee had recommended a combined facility because it would save on mechanicals and facility costs and operational costs. At the beginning, you said, you looked at it and the quote wasn't that much. I think before you bring this to the town, you should have numbers behind that as to what not really that much is, because that was one of the
About
things.
it's about $175, maybe $200,000 savings, if you, out of 8 million on the way they had it, or 7
It's $8
million.
million up front versus the annual cost, which is going to be coming out of a fund that you said is going to have decreasing input to it over the next 20 years too.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's going to have decreasing, I mean, it's going to have, but the tax rate is still going to go up. And then there are other things involved in the tax rate that may change that. I don't think that I don't think the amount of money going into that account would ever in the life of this get below a certain amount. I mean, I know there's a cutoff point. I think you said $1 million on valuation.
$1 million on tax revenue.
Yeah, I'm not here to argue it.
Yeah, no, I'm just, well, to answer your first question, both chiefs have been in this since the very beginning as far as locations and sites and what we're doing. And so they're part of this because they should be part of it. I mean, it's their stuff, they do it, we don't. And as far as the life of the building goes, the life of the building will be as long as a regular stick-built building. They're not flimsy in the slightest bit. And as far as the configuration and the layout, the only driving factor in that is that they're probably in this building here, I'd have to go back to the layout, there's probably 11 over-the-road units that are in that building. And then they marry them together. I mean, you know, they bring them on site, they put them together, they bind them up, they seal them together, and then they put a truss roof on the top. So at that point, you could have, that whole thing could be open inside. There are no necessarily bearing walls there. And it could be laid out in any way, pretty much in any way you want to do it. I mean, fire station, same thing. The fire station's fairly cut and dry. You need apparatus bays of a certain size to do it, but the apparatus bays aren't part of that trailer. They would be, you know, the panels would be shipped and basically erected by a crane and put together, again, truss roof, the whole thing.
I have nothing against the modular. I only got a little bit upset is when we started this whole deal, we talked about modular, it was poo-pooed. I don't know, we want a stick and mortar, we don't want anything to do with modulars. And yet, at the very, very end, after they had done all this work with the engineering and everything, they said, well, maybe we'll talk about modular, but nothing was ever said to us. We could have gone in a completely different vein on our study with the group as far as modular homes, because I know the modular homes are fantastic. I dealt with them residentially, and I have nothing against a modular home. But we asked about this the first time, and they said, no, we don't want a modular home. We don't want any more.
I wasn't part of that decision. I don't know who, I don't know who did it. It wasn't really a thought. The study wasn't to determine that so much. The study was to determine what we needed, what the future need was going to be, and evaluate what we had, and that it was perfect for that. I mean, it was great. It got that done. Now the question is, if we want to get it done in a most cost-effective manner, do we do it modular, or do we do it stick-to?
I think more important than that is where you're going to put it.
Well, I think when we get done with the evaluation, I think there's the adjacent here for the police station is a good location. It doesn't compromise this. It fits in. We'll get gas to it. We have a septic system already built in, so that's not going to be an additional expense there. And assuming the testing comes back, assuming the footprint works for the fire station, Center Street is another good location because it's centrally located. I mean, there's other land around. We looked at other things that we don't necessarily own, and things we do. Maple Street, we could put a police station on Maple Street, but it's kind of, frankly, in my opinion, it's a waste of a valuable piece of land. I mean, as far as the town goes, we had that perked. There are at least 2 building lots there, two large building lots there. So that's a fairly valuable thing. The town may want that, or may need it, or may want to sell it for some other reason in the future. But you can only put the police station there because it's too far out for the fire station. It's just too far at that end of town for response time at the other end of town.
Yeah.
John?
So just, I have a few comments, but I want to just follow up on one of Barry's points. I think we kind of got off on a bit of that. I think the question about and this of course is a central part to the report that we had done, so of course people will hear it because they heard it before. Having the 2 buildings, it's not just about the cost of building them or even the cost of mechanicals, it's the cost of running the 2 buildings over time, and how's that going to eat into budget. Now granted, they're going to be energy efficient buildings, it's going to be better, but even from a police station perspective, today we're heating this building, and we're still going to be heating this building 3 years from now when we have a new police station, so that's all net new.
You're going to have additional operating costs.
Right, and so I think that's part of the piece, just from a perspective of what we do going to town meeting, that needs to be sort of just figured in about why we do combined building versus 2 separate. Because I think that adds an incremental cost that perhaps isn't there, just looking at how much is it going to cost to build 2 versus 1.
I mean, when you build the 2 together, the only thing you have the common wall, obviously, and you can use a central HVAC system for both. But it still has to be sized up to the additional size of the building.
Sure.
So, I mean, are you saving? Maybe, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I don't know the answer either. I just know that's going to be, for the average person who's been
I think the
watching
thing
this,
it's
gonna be
important to
a glaring-
remember, well, like I said at the beginning, because that argument comes up, and it's a valid question, it's a valid argument, but fire stations they're open, they're wide open, the doors are open, people are around, they're working around, people bring their kids in if they want to see the equipment and the chief and fire people. It's a wide open thing. Police stations, by their very nature, are secure bunkers. You can't get anywhere near them or anywhere near inside of them for a lot of reasons. That's the way they have to be. So when you put them side by side, you've got one that's a bunker and one that's that's wide open. And they're just different kinds of buildings. I mean, these buildings are built with police stations. They're built with fewer windows. There's all sorts of security involved in it. Security systems, cameras, all of that kind of stuff. And you don't really have that in a fire station. So you get the common wall, and you really don't get a common, you say you want an exercise area, but that's just a small matter of square footage and not really, you're not like a workout room. Well, I guess you'd save yourself, 400 or 500 square feet there, but it really doesn't, if we put that in one facility or in the other facility, then hopefully we'd be able to go back and forth and use them if they're separate buildings. But you don't really save as much, because I did this when I did, in the last town I was in. Since that discussion came up a lot as to whether to build a joint facility or a separate facility. And as it came, the final solution there was to buy an existing building for the fire department, which was it was owned by a company that does excavation, and they had a lot of heavy equipment, so they had the big bays, plus they had 2,000 square feet of space that could be retrofitted for the fire department needs. So that's the way that one went, and they're in the process now of building a separate police station, about 6,000 square feet.
If I could clarify a point that Barry had asked, I wanted to step back just for a second. When we looked at the facilities for fire and police, it's based on a current needs assessment. What do we need right now to go forward safely and properly, and how it should carry us in the future, because we don't anticipate huge growth of the community, but it's current needs, and we made sure we covered that. If we're going to do it, let's do it once right. As far as a dual-purpose facility, the point is, well, where can we put it? Primarily on town-owned property, if we could do it. And that there are some issues with some of the town-owned property that could support both that are not favorable to that choice. There is some cost savings, a small amount of cost savings, no question, but with what we own, and that was another thing this committee was very cued in on, was can we do this on town-owned property and not have additional costs? And that's kind of really what's led us to where we are now.
And the other thing you do, that if you don't do it, one of their scenarios, one of the better scenarios in here, which I like, but it requires putting the current building in a dumpster and moving the ball fields. And you get that demolition cost, you know, and I know a lot of people were unhappy about moving those ball fields. And, you know, I mean, people like what they like, and I can understand that. And the cost associated with that was about $175,000. So you can build two separate buildings, and if you don't move those fields, it's sort of a wash. And without having, I mean, you may have, you know, access for the police department, even if it's over there, you may have access through here to get to it as an additionally off of 58. That's not a lot of traffic. You're not interfering with the fire department, because the building can be, you know, I mean, the building will be there, but it won't be used as a fire department. I mean, it will be used as, I shouldn't say that. It will house fire equipment. Therefore, it becomes a second station in town. That gives Plympton another whole ISO insurance rating. Basically, that's going to lower everybody's insurance, their homeowner's insurance. Not by a ton, but I mean, it's a benefit.
I mean, you're talking about this like having this fire station set up for storage, and it's going to cost you way more than $175,000 to do that.
To do
Just
what?
to get it up to code, to even...
This building over here?
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to have to, no, because we're not going to have to, it won't be, it's going to be basically storage and, you know, and vehicles, but it's not going to, we're not bringing that building up to code.
Whether you park it there with milk cans or anything.
Yeah, but unless you do a major renovation, you do not have to bring it up to code. Well, you don't have to bring it up to code.
Electrical boxes and grounded.
What?
Well, there's no, you're not supposed to say those things. There's actually no.
That's why they
Correct.
walk around with rubber shoes.
Well, certainly there are some things that you're correct that need to have it brought up to code in order to use it for whatever we use it.
Anything.
Whether it be a partial council aging, partial fire department storage, highway police, whatever. There are costs associated with their
I mean,
operation.
depending on what the final cost of this whole thing comes out to, we could include that in as well, because we're already planning on including the upgrades for moving gas down here, and for moving gas onto Center Street, and putting gas into the highway barn. So, I mean, and that, I mean, those sorts of minor remediations could be part of it, if that needs, those sorts of things need to be fixed.
Will the fire station need a well besides septic, or just septic?
No, it needs a well.
That's what the problem with that lot was getting septic and a well on the site. That was the problem.
That's why we ruled it out completely, even at the meeting we had, the final meeting we had.
So, I mean, unless, I'm not,
Well, I don't know. I mean, again, I haven't really evaluated all of that yet, and if that's, and that could easily be, you know, that could easily be the case, and if
my
that's the
question
case.
is, if Center Street doesn't work, what's your fallback on that? Do you guys have thought haven't got that yet.
All that might be right back here.
Back here. For the fire, still the police here. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's not a bad solution,
Yeah, yeah.
but,
There's some other privately owned lots that we've looked at, and one of the thoughts we have is now that Maple Street perked, we sell that,
yeah,
try to trade it with somebody, but
for another lot.
bottom line is sell that and purchase another lot. There's a couple, there's one on Mayflower and there's one on Main.
There's a beautiful one on Main, right next to the Hysterical Society.
For the right across the street.
Are you gonna donate that?
No,
But,
donate is not part of the Irish vocabulary.
No, I mean, for what doesn't matter, it's just me. The Chiefs have certainly sold me on the modular, if they're good with it and what it can do for them. That's all that matters to me. The Center Street lot, again, we just didn't see it as being able to get a perk in a well. And if that is different, once we actually do it, then that's different.
That could be, it came late to the game, and by the time we got into wanting to do the evaluation on that, because we did Maple Street, we did this, although we didn't finish the perk test, I mean, it's okay, we're clear, but they didn't get it completely done because all of a sudden we have 3 feet of snow on the ground. And that sort of put the brakes on much on Center Street. Yeah, I mean, you can't find anything anymore. If anybody had ever told me you could end up with this amount of snow on the ground this close to the ocean, I never would have believed it. But you have more snow along the ocean than we have 50 miles inland. Not a lot more, but you have more.
We have more snow than Anchorage, Alaska.
Yes, we do.
Aren't we lucky?
There's more coming.
So, couple things. One, just a thank you to Dale, to you, John, yourself, and everyone who's spent all this time working on this. This is a lot of work. I'll also say I'm not necessarily against modular. Ted Benson does all modular now. He's a timber framer. He's been on this house a couple times. And the house in Weston, whole house was done modular with some timber framing, putting it all together. Beautiful stuff. It can be done really well, and that's great. I guess and then, to some of the basic things of aesthetics, looking at siding and things like that, that's all good. But I guess the piece to that is that it's going to be a differential in cost. And at what point do we look at that in the process? Because what you don't want to end up happening is that we get down the road and we go, well, we only had this much for siding, so we have to use this. And that would be, I think, a less than ideal solution for getting what we would probably all want here. And we have to make sure that we get the pros and cons of that. Also from a maintenance perspective, because some things are low maintenance for one thing, but if they're also getting a lot of traffic, they can end up looking pretty bad after a little bit of time. And then I guess just one other thought on the police station, and then I have a more overarching comment, is, I don't think this is flat over here, so I'm sure that is going to have some impact. I mean, I think it drops pretty quickly when you get past the grass line here.
It does, but we may be able to, again, this is very early in the game. We may want to put it on these things can be dropped, these trailers can be dropped on a permanent foundation. We may want to, assess it, see if that's the way to do it, and then maybe use that lower level space
Or something else.
finished rather than, so that's fewer trailers you
Have
have.
a basement.
Right.
Basically have a basement.
Possibly with the
It would be a drive-in
And
basement.
your cells could be in the basement. I mean, so this.
Yeah. So the one thing that I think there's a lot of great possibilities here, but the one piece that I'm feeling like I'm missing, and maybe it's just me, is, often we do this type of work with an architect. So it's sort of like we did the pre-work to figure out what do we need, what are some of the, get the big picture options out there. And then, in my mind, you typically go back and say, okay, so thanks for that, that's great. So what are we going to do here now? Now we said we want to go this way, we've now narrowed it down, because I think I feel like we're kind of doing this and we're doing that, and yet we really have a bigger issue here that we need to, one, deal with this stuff out here. I don't think it's fair to call it a parking lot.
Yeah, that's a really good point, John. Because in those numbers that you cited, those numbers have engineering costs in there for the new buildings. And then that's hiring an architect and engineering firm to design the buildings. That's built into that 6.7 or whatever total you came up to.
Yeah.
So,
But we have more to do, I think, than just build a police station, build a fire
Yeah, right.
station. We have to figure out, I don't know. I mean, I'll be quite honest, I can't stand our little fire station.
You'd have to hire a project manager. The state would insist that you did. They have a project manager for the one that they have in Dartmouth. And basically, which is very money very well spent. They have, in the study, they mentioned project managers too, that run about 2% of the cost, but that's not necessarily etched in stone. It can be more, it can be less. It depends on what the project is. But they would, they would be. And then there'd be other things on the wish list. And again, it's how much money do we want to actually borrow to do all of this stuff?
Right, but some of that was already incorporated in what the other estimates were for the study. So when we were all said and done from the study, this whole space, wherever the buildings ended up, everything was done. So the parking lot issues between the library and the townhouse and 16 entrances coming in and out and never knowing what's where, not having parking spaces big enough. All that was sorted as part of the overall thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's part of the thinking for the costs for both buildings, then that's great. And if there's someone who's going to plan all that and put that together and make sure we're getting all the input where we need to, then I think that's great. I clearly they're going to have an architect or an engineer for, if we're building a police station, for that. But are they doing that, or are they doing that and everything else? Or, you don't want to end up with two buildings, new buildings, wherever they are, and an old building here that turns out to cost us more to run than worth keeping, and a mess of the parking lot stuff.
Well, the heat would go off, so that would cost us less that way,
But you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's, the number, the
Oh,
nut that we're trying to
absolutely
crack
right.
was a total nut for the whole thing, and sometimes you take the component parts, we might be losing some of the other pieces.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're really early on,
I agree
maybe a month, but I mean, the
completely.
initial stab was, okay, we need to build a police station, a fire station, how are we gonna do it? And I know that you're absolutely right, and depending on, this will go to RFP, and obviously it has to go to seal bid and all of that kind of stuff, that all has to be done once it's done, but once we get some RFPs for this stuff, we can get some, I know, like Jimmy's getting us some information on bringing the gas in now. He could equally give us information on, okay, fine, we like the layout that they did in here for the library, we may not need as much parking or as much anything, but the layout for the library and the parking lot and the landscaping and all of that kind of stuff. We could get some ballpark numbers, I'm sure Jimmy would probably be more than happy to do that at this point, to give us an idea, so we've got an idea there. And then, when the time comes, you're probably going to have a landscape architect who come in and say, okay, fine, you need to do this. The landscaping around a fire station, if you put it on Center Street, is going to be fairly minimal, just looking at that. Same thing with the police station over there. I mean, it would have a certain amount of lawn to it, but that's the way it would work. But, that's sort of down the road, and good points. I mean, it's all part of what's going to have to
Put into
happen.
the cost, because I think if we end up with the buildings and we don't address still this issue that we continually have over here, like we did the other week with the town meeting, that we have here, it limits what we can do out here because of how it's set up, and so I think if it's all part of it, then
Yeah. Well, no, and I think that's a good point. I think it all should be part of it. In other words, you want
Because
to
some of
finish.
that will help us deal with, making sure that whatever building or buildings we end up putting on this site, are keeping keeping within, the context of the buildings that we have here and the space and the scale and all of that. It's not just about what we put on the siding, it's the whole package. And as long as we're looking at that ahead of time and seeing how it sets in, depending how it sets into the hill here, you may not see much of it at all. It all depends on sort of how everything sites out, and keeping that dialogue and having someone who's sort of overseeing all of that and can put it all in the context would be important.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%.
Is there someone volunteer?
Architect, I am not.
Well, somebody said they were going to be retired on a fixed income pretty soon. I think you probably have plenty
Well, it
to do.
depends on how much you're gonna pay them for the committee.
No, you see this smile? I really like having you here. You do a great job.
Yeah, hey, one thing we gotta say about James, Jimmy Mulcahy and the crew for the highway department, unbelievable job they did in these snowstorms.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
All we need to do is just go from Plympton to Carver to see the difference.
Or to Kingston.
Or to Kingston.
You know when you cross the town line.
Any town around it. I drive 50 miles to get here.
Yeah.
Only 495 looks better than the streets in Plympton. It's really done a good job.
True.
And we talked about that last week too, Jim, we just weren't here to hear it.
I leave now.
You gotta go home and get some sleep. You were
So
up
One
late.
one of the things I think we need to think about here is there a sense of urgency or not? You know, and I believe there is. I mean, I think we're almost in an emergency position. And I think that what we've got to do, and we can do that, I think we can say, okay, this is the max that we can comfortably spend. And we do have to, we kind of joke about it, we can't use all of that stabilization account, because there are other things that are going to have to come out of it. So, I mean, I think we're going to have a number, and then say, what can we do? Can we meet the emergency needs, number one? And then number two, how much more can we do? And that's the way you gotta work. I was the project manager on Ocean Spray's headquarters. And what they put a finance person in charge of it because we had a very limited budget. And what we did is we drove to get all the stuff we had to have. And then at the end, we knew what we had left. And if you've ever been there, there's almost a mile of stone walls that we had built, things like that. So, I mean, that's, you know, we've got to meet the emergency needs, I believe. And maybe the town will think differently. And then see what else we can afford.
And we get a little further down the road, it'll be, I mean, I'm still brain picking these different companies we're dealing with, you know, just give me some ballpark numbers here, you know. But when we flesh it out finally and get it done and put out an RFP for it, then we'll have that part of, you know, that part of the puzzle. We'll have a hard, fast number we can plug in, whatever it happens to be, I don't know. And again, like John says, and I agree, you want to see how much money is going into that account, what you can reasonably anticipate will go into it over the next sort of 20 years, and how much of that do you want to encumber in the form of a bond to do all of this. My guess is, I mean, my first run by it was I didn't think 4 million, or about half of what's going in now into that account annually, would be a bad number. I don't know if you can build both buildings for that. I don't know how much you can get done for that. I'm guessing you probably can, but I don't know. So at this point, that would be good. And then how much, then we've got to look at the add-ons, you know, the rest of the stuff. I mean, I certainly think we ought to, if we're going to do that, we ought to remediate that building to whatever we need to at least make sure it's not going to be a hazard. And the parking lot is
Decide whether we're even going to keep it.
You can use it at all.
I mean, that's, decide whether we're even going to keep it. I mean, there's arguments to just not have it there too. I think that's the point, is that some
You
of
mean
the
the
stuff-
fire station itself, the old fire station? I mean, if it comes to that, then, I mean, then we have no problem relocating the new fire station. Because we could put a new fire station immediately in front of that one. You'd have to be, I mean, it'd be crazy how you'd lay it out. You'd be driving through it for the, you know, I mean, how they would lay it out, because you have to have a fire station. You can't just shut one down until a new one's ready. But again, modular makes that easy.
Yeah, and that is the problem. You made a great point. Where are you going to put us while this is going on?
Well, you'd stay where you are. I mean,
Right,
you
but I
would
mean,
stay
that's
where you are, and
the
we'll just build that building in front of your old building. And I mean, it certainly wouldn't be convenient, it wouldn't be easy, but I mean, it could be done, and probably done in such a way that, you know, that once the, you know, if the site work were done at a reasonable time of year, not this time of year, you know, you would probably have some vehicles outside for a month or so until the pads were down and the slab was down for the apparatus bay. And then the apparatus bay would be the last thing you would build. In other words, you'd build the the trailer would go, you would build the utility part of it, and then erect the apparatus bay. But it would only take probably another 30 days to erect that. And for 30 days, you'd have vehicles
Yeah,
outside.
in the summer, that would work, sure.
Yeah, I mean, so it would be all a matter of planning it. And I mean, if that's the case, I mean, we still save the ball fields. I mean, it's as busy as it here as it is then as it is now, because you've still got everything. Police and fire are both still here. That's certainly a possibility.
So I will comment again as a private citizen, and I have to say was very skeptical of this. I've kind of come around a lot. Was very concerned about the beauty of the building, but knowing or hearing that the siding can be anything is helpful. The way I've really come around is there's also, besides the beauty of the building architecturally, the beauty of doing something that's functional and cost-effective at the same time. If the numbers work out, if we can do this not with money left in the capital stabilization, I mean, that solves not all of our financial problems, but makes a huge difference.
Well, I mean, it certainly will help. And again, I mean, again, I don't know. I'm not sure. It's too early to really tell. But I think it can be done. I mean, it might go as high, depending on what you want to do. And again, the board may want to consider, we're at a point now where, you put some other people. I mean, at this point, we've done it just with the financial people and the chiefs, the people who actually operate these departments, and they're the ones that kind of know what they need and what works. After that, some other expertise coming in might be good. They may want to put a committee together. I mean, again, after we have the site evaluation on Center Street, because if that's the case, and it could very well be, you could be right that you couldn't put a well and a septic on there. Although I look at it and I think you can, and I think they laid it out here with a septic and a well. The separation doesn't have to be that far.
It's 3 acres, so.
Yeah, it's over 3 acres. It's 3 acres, so.
They did that, well, they showed two renditions. One was just police, one was just fire. I don't have it with me.
Yeah. And the other, I mean, again, we don't know. I mean, but if that site works and it goes in and the numbers look good for running gas down the street, and I mean, I know that, when I mentioned putting gas in the streets, everybody says, put it on my street, because I know I buy oil for my house too, and gas is a half a mile away, and it's like, and you have to gas heat the fire station, because it's going to be somewhere around 11,000 square foot building, and when you got trucks full of water, you just can't let them get cold. I mean, you don't have to have the apparatus bay at 80, but it has to be above freezing, has to be reasonably comfortable for people to work and maintain things, 60, 65. If it's gas powered, that's going to be an awful lot more efficient. Oil would be prohibitive. The other thing is possibility too is since we're a green community and we'll get through this grant, there are competitive grants available. We may be able to actually do something with these new buildings with the new grants with some that they tend to like insulation more than they like solar power, but maybe solar hot water or whatever. That's a possibility.
So what is the, because I'm still struggling with the concept that we didn't have an architect tell us, okay, here's your gun plan, now go to town meeting, we know what it is, we know what we're doing. How are we going to crack this nut? I assume we're thinking of trying to have a go at May? Or is this another year off?
If it's another year off, it might as well be 5.
Yeah, no, I think you can probably do it by May. Again, it's a bonding issue, but I don't think we're going to probably end up doing it in May. I think the recommendation is going to be to hold a special town meeting in the fall. And it's a standalone thing, get together, do we want to borrow this money, here's what it's going to cost, this is what we're going to end up with at the end of it, and go from there.
That's the first I've heard of that. I think that if we don't take action in May, then there's no need to have a special. You go try for the next May or the May after that. Your financing window is right now.
Yeah, and that's the big driver.
Pardon me?
Last week or two, they're questioning whether it's going to be a raise in rates. But it doesn't really matter. It's going to happen when it happens, and they've been saying the rates are going to raise for 3 years now, and also others have been saying.
Well, actually, the residential mortgage rates are going up now.
Well, they run ahead of what the Fed does, and in the last week, a lot of the folks are saying they're going to question what the Fed's going to raise. But that really isn't the point, because if I knew when the rates were going to go up, we could just place a couple bets and you could fund everything. So since that's not going to happen, I don't have that ball crystal ball.
I mean, it could be done in May.
I guess the
Like the
question
authorization to
is
borrow.
what would it, if we end up not being able to go in May, and it therefore doesn't make any more sense to go for a special town meeting, does it make sense to take a small amount of money and go back to like the architectural firm that we hired to do all of the work that they did and say, okay, we've now narrowed it down to this, can you spend 30 hours or 40, whatever it take to crunch it down and give us a package to be able to go to town meeting and say, we can do this for this, and this for this, and this for this cost, and it's more buttoned up in
That's why you
that way
write,
to.
but that's why you write the RFP for modular, and they use their own architects and they build to your specs, whatever your specifications
All
are.
right, but there's other stuff around the side of that too. I mean, it's not just, again, to my point, you're not just building the 2 buildings, we've got all these other pieces that are all connected to the overall project. And I don't think it has to be much money, but I'm just throwing it out there, because I think that the process that I think most people think of is in an ideal world, when we don't have emergencies and money isn't an enormous issue, you go out and figure out what in God's name do we even need, and what are some of the options. And then you take that back, you go, okay, great, thank you, that's helpful. Here is what we're thinking we would like to do. We'd like to go down this path. And then, architect and engineers go out and they come back to you and say, okay, here's your blueprint of what you need to go get money to build. And then you go and you do that, and it's a lot of the work, you've already done a good chunk of that by running around and talking to all of these companies, but that's where they can go and sort of put it all together into a package, and then you're able to go to that. It's sort of like what we did with the historic asset inventory survey. We ended up spending the money to have the consultant go around and figure out all of what we needed to do, and then we were able to come back to CPC and say, we need this much money to get this done because it's all right here. We could have guesstimated it and done a lot of work ourselves, but it wouldn't have been as complete. So that's just
Typically, if you're designing a building from scratch, you're right. I mean, you have architects, engineers, all that stuff. They do all the designs. They put together the bid package, all of that stuff for you. That usually costs 10% of the project. In a case, one of the beauties of the modular buildings is they already have all their CAD CAM designs, and so you don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
All you need to do is say, okay, I want a peaked roof. I want, clapboards and stuff. And so as far as the building is concerned, I don't think you need architecturals or engineers. You need a project manager. But I think what you're talking about is the landscaping part of it.
Well, I'm just making sure everything is tied together, so you know that both the buildings, you've got the information, this is the right structure. We're thinking about everything we need to for the needs from the one report to what we're looking to get, and then making sure everything else is tied in, which is why I said I don't think it would be a huge amount of money, but it would sort of tie it up into a package that then is very easy and consumable for.
Well, I think if we use the landscape architect, it would be whatever it was, but I mean, like John says, and generally speaking, not generally, definitely, design cost when you hire architects is 10% of your finished cost. So if your building is estimated to cost $3.5 million, they want $350,000 to give you a set of blueprints. That's what we're trying, one of the costs that we're trying to avoid by doing a modular is we don't need to do that. I mean, that's all part of their bid price is they lay out whatever your square footage program is for your building, they do it. They lay it out. I mean, like I said, these buildings can be set up in any way they want to set them up. So they're paying for all of that, and like John says here, we'll tell them what we want on the roof and what we want, for aesthetics and siding and whatever. That's all well and good, but you're right. I think you get a very valid point about the landscaping, and we could use set it up as we could hire a landscape architect to do that. Or maybe we could go to some university that teaches it and say, you know, here's a project. You know, here's our study, this is what they said, come down, shoot the sites, you know, take the grades for the whole thing, and let us know what we need to accomplish. Let us know what we need to accomplish all of this, including costing it out. And then that's an RFP, we send the RFP out. Now, that would be a prevailing wage project, but I think a lot of that could get done, a fair amount of it would get done, well, not all of it, but I mean, a lot of it would get done in-house, you know, I'm giving the highway department more work. But-
I already have a building.
Huh?
I already have a building.
I got a green thumb, right? Before you got more work,
Yeah. But again, once we get, you know, once we go to these companies and get a solid RFP with some numbers behind it, you know, says, well, okay, it's gonna come in around here, you know, for a number, then we know, okay, that's gonna cost us this much. Then we've gotta go back and there's other stuff you have to consider. I mean, you know, you have to consider one thing they don't do. The fire station's gonna be expensive. It has to be sprinkled. It's over 7,500 square feet. And it's a reasonable thing. I mean, you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment in there. You would kind of want a sprinkler on it if you were gonna have a
You can't
fire.
have the fire station burned down, that just
That would
sends the
be
wrong
bad.
message.
Yeah, it has happened in other places, but
Yeah, it's just-
that, you know, that sort of stuff. They're gonna need a Plympton vent system, which is an exhaust system, because they, you know, they stay inside, run trucks indoors in the winter with the doors closed so they can operate them and do all the stuff that they do on them. Plus, you know, vac them in, warm them up, whatever they do. But anyway, that's a requirement, the Plympton vent system, which is standard, probably gonna be $60,000 to $70,000 for that. That's another thing we've got to figure in. Security for the police station, that's not going to be figured into this. That, you know, I can be wired for it, but it's going to have to be.
I mean, you've done an enormous amount of work on this, and it really is thoroughly impressive. I guess I just look at the scale of this, whether we're able to do it for 4 million or 3 million or 6 million, that I would just not want us to miss anything. And is it prudent to, again, without hiring, because, you know, you can hire an architect to do like that percentage. You can also hire them by the hour, right, or a small project. I mean, you know, what the other firm did for 50 grand, that was a heck of a report.
That's a lot of
that we
stuff
got.
for $50,000.
So something a lot smaller than that, but to make sure that, you know, that everything is all inclusive, because there's nothing worse than going back to town meeting to ask for a little more money to finish something up.
Oh, I agree. It would all be part of it.
And that wouldn't, you know, that,
Yeah.
we would have already, you know, because the thing is if we're going to put it somewhere, better in the bond at 2 3/4 than it is paying for it out of free cash. You know,
Oh, yeah.
at least given the way our finances would be. So I'm going to.
No, good point. Good point.
I
Good
think I
points.
beat it.
Good points. So you're volunteering to get involved in this now, is what I heard?
I'm not the person to tell you whether you're missing anything here. I mean, that's the thing, that's why I'm saying is
Yeah.
it makes sense to do that. I mean, I'm certainly here to
Yeah.
help.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of it's in the study as far as what they, you know, as far as what they recommended. I mean, so, I mean.
Absolutely, but now we're sort of focused on a path, and want to make sure that we have all these pieces. It sounds like you have a lot of them, because you've already listed off a lot of things, but whether we need to make sure if we're going in May, it doesn't matter, because, you know, May is tomorrow. It doesn't look like it outside, but it will
Well, I mean,
be.
if we're going in May, whenever you go, it's going to be, it's a bonding issue. So in other words, if you've got numbers that you can actually say, these numbers are real, then you go to the May town meeting and you ask for the authorization to bond, to borrow whatever amount of money it takes based on, you know, based on what, and then that decision will be made by the financial people, you know, the treasurer, you know, the accountant, the board of selectmen, and whoever else is interested in it. Is this, you know, can we afford this? In other words, can we afford to use $280,000 a year out of that capital account? And we'll get, you know, the projections and so on, and then get the bonding numbers, and it would just be, again, it's just a matter of bonding at current rates. That'll take several months anyway, because we'll have to be reviewed, they'll have to do a new Dun & Bradstreet on us, and there's bond costs involved in that as well, but, I mean, that's just the way it is.
Right.
You know, but I think that's good, but, you know, 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 I think that's good, you stay close, because you ask a lot of good questions here.
I don't seem to ever be able to get far away.
Well, you know,
Unlike-
when you buy a house on the
unlike
green, that's
Barry,
what
I have to
happens.
smile.
Very good.
So the public safety group that's been meeting meets Thursday morning at 10 a.m. to continue the work. So, open meeting, everybody's welcome, weird time of day. It's one of the reasons we did this one at night, to get the input of the talented people around. So thanks, everybody. And that actually completes the agenda for the evening. We'll be back at it Thursday.
And will we adjourn?
All right, very incisive. Second, all those in favor? Aye. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks, Comcast.